Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the Don't Give a Ruck podcast. I'm your host, as per usual, Nathan Parker, and joining me on today's show is the man who helped deliver Wales' first Grand Slam in 27 years. Myself and Mike Ruddock take a look back at that glorious 2005 Grand Slam, as well as analysing Wales' performances in this year's Six Nations. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment and a rating on our iTunes page, and follow us on our social channels by clicking the link in the description below. Enjoy the show. Right, well, firstly, Mike, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And secondly, a huge congratulations is in order for the win on Friday and everyone involved at the Ospreys.
Yeah, fantastic win for the Ospreys. If you look at what's happened over the last 12, 14 months, we've come a long way, and I think the scoreboard on Friday sort of reflected that. Toby Booth, Brock James and the coaching team have done a fantastic job, not just in terms of, shaping the performances, the way they've sort of shaped the culture as well and given everyone self-belief, the way they've, given the energy back to the squad, really. I think there was a few dark clouds hanging over the place, but there's a lot of great young players that are given opportunities to as well. We were very, very impressed that we can go to Leinster and get a result. And I guess similarly, a bit like, unfortunately, what happened with Wales, it was, in the dying moments that the result sort of changed hands, or the score changed hands, and the hard work sort of got the result in the end. So, the unseen work, Toby's big into what he calls TNT, takes no talent actions, really, which, for example, would be like chasing kicks, and that's what happened at the end with the charge down, and that unseen work can lead to something that's quite remarkable, and got us over the line and got us a result. So, that sort of philosophy and that sort of mindset is driving that squad. So, big thanks to Toby.
And I don't think people realise how big qualifying for the Champions Cup actually is, financially as well. You've brought in Will Hickey, I think, last week, and I think Jack Morgan's on his way, which is an absolute steal. What a play. He was brilliant again for the Scarlets last night. But how big is it to actually qualify for the Champions Cup and get back in that tournament next season?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a catch-22. If you qualify, it's absolutely fantastic for all the reasons you just said, and financially, and hopefully there'll be some crowds back in next season that can enjoy it, and I guess gives us a chance to benchmark ourselves and see where we are and the improvements that we are making, from certainly from last season. But at the same time, if your squad is not sort of strong enough, if you get a lot of injuries, which we've had in the past, certainly upon my arrival, we were in the midst of a difficult time for injuries, but we sort of weren't quite, on the money in terms of performances and squad depth, particularly when the internationals are away and just coming back and time to sort of integrate into the game plan. Then it could go the other way. It can be quite tough on you then, because, the teams you play against are obviously the top of Europe, So, right, I think we're all working hard to try and strengthen our talent pyramid and strengthen our talent pool. We've got some great plans. We've got a great partnership with Swansea University, working really hard with those guys. And, Hugo Staffson, the head coach, James Hook is coaching down there for attack. So the university team really will be a big focus for us as well, in terms of align ourselves to that project, and there'll be guys coming into that. Will Hickey, you mentioned earlier, is coming. He's just been signed by the Ospreys, but he'll also be studying at Swansea University, and we'll be taking a very close look at the guys there. There's a couple of guys that are training with us at the moment, with a wider group from Swansea University, and some of them have been asked to train with the first team. So it just shows the focus we put on our university team as an extension of our sort of player pathway program, really.
Well, there were 5 Ospreys involved for Wales on the weekend in that dramatic that loss to France. I've not watched the game back because I know what the ending is. But what an advert for Six Nations rugby, Mike.
Yeah, it really was a fantastic match, and I've got to pay tribute to the referee team. the TMO, Wayne Barnes, I thought they handled the game superbly. The big moments, there was a lot of composure. The processes they used, the communication they used, it was very, very impressive. Not everyone will agree with every decision, but you couldn't fault the meticulous and forensic way they went through the processes and discussed the whole sort of way things were unfolding, really. And I thought it was mightily impressive. And what stuck out to me is when we've had some really tip-top refereeing performances, we've had some great games. And I think the England-France game was another one of those, really. And the referee in that game, I think, is a lad from Cardiff, Andrew Brace, originally, now working in Ireland. And I remember coaching Lansdowne, and he in the All Ireland League. And Andrew Brace was a young referee coming on the scene. And I remember being very impressed with him then. I thought he stood out at that level and was destined to great things. And I thought his refereeing in the England-France game was outstanding. Some of the other games, I think we've seen the other side of how frustrating rugby can be. And I think the lawmakers they really need to tweak a few things, I think, going forward. For example, some of the full penalties at a scrum engagement, you wonder, they're so tight sometimes that should a side then suddenly get the advantage of a kick downfield 30, 40, 50 metres and the next line out. You just wonder if that's the way forward. Obviously, there's some scrum penalties like collapsing, deliberate sort of collapsing, or the inability to hold pressure that I would argue are worthy of a full penalty. But some of the sort of jump in the gun ones type penalties and some of the sort of finicky ones, could be just free kicks. For example, another example would be the line out. When a lifter gets in behind the line out jumper, was that worthy of a full penalty as well? Because I think there was one in the Ireland-England game where England got a foothold in the Ireland 22. It was a full penalty for a guy coming in behind the jumper. England kicked it downfield. There was another penalty, and suddenly, Ireland kicked it downfield, and suddenly Ireland camped on the England in the England 22. From those two decisions. So I think those things like that could be looked at, really. But otherwise, some of the games were fantastic.
Do you think that's the problem with rugby at the moment, where it is all down to interpretation? It's not like football where everything's set in stone. So with Luke Pearce on the weekend, the one thing I noticed was he wanted Gareth Davis and Dupont to use the ball really quickly. As soon as the ball was available, he was saying use it. So that made for a very quick game. Whereas you get some other games where refs maybe allow maybe 5 seconds and then another 5 seconds after they say use it. Is it maybe, difficult for people coming into the sport as a new fan to sort of get to grips with the laws these days?
Well, it is, yeah, it is, and it's open to interpretation as well, and some referees are harder. So if you go back a little bit further in the process on, they use it at the back of the ruck. Now that's, as you said, that's impressive from those referees, but it's only impressive when they clear the ruck area and make it what I call green quality ball. So if you want to play attack in rugby, you have to try and play off green quality ball, or at least amber quality ball, to try and regenerate some pace on the ball. If players are allowed to lie in the ruck, lie on the wrong side, slow the ball down through body sort of language, body actions in and around the ruck, and you end up with what I call red quality ball, and the referee is shouting to use it, and you can't lift it over those players. The defence has got time to set. So then when you do use it, your team are being smashed by a blitz defence, an aggressive defence, eating up the space. So, fair play to those referees. And I think the players realise it. And, even consciously and subconsciously, the rolling away factor is much better when they really respect the referee's communication around the ruck and his use of sanctions around the ruck to send out a strong message that he wants that ruck area cleared quickly so that sides can play. And I think that was, again, the outstanding feature of some of those better games we saw.
And Wales have been, notoriously known over the last three championships for their discipline. They haven't had a yellow card in the last three championships as a whole. Then all of a sudden, two come along at once. Let's say you're in the Welsh hot seat. You're the head coach for Saturday, and the last 10 minutes. What do you do as a coach? Was it so crazy and so quick that it's hard to change things, or would you have maybe kept Dan Bigger on, maybe keep that continuity there? What would you have done?
Well, it's always easy in hindsight. You can always argue about the substitutions and all that sort of stuff. But, I mean, he's worked for Wayne Pivac in the past, those substitutions. He knew it was going to be, a very frenetic ending to the game. So there's a big argument for having fresh legs on there, particularly then, again, when you have the snowball effect of losing a man or so, having some fresher legs on it to cover more ground. It was a useful tactic. Then is the argument of keeping, those generals on the field. Things have been working so well, that's the roll of the dice of the coach, but it certainly didn't come down to that, and I think it's very difficult to argue, that Wales were, very, very disciplined throughout and have been on the right side of a lot of those decisions earlier in the tournament. So it's very difficult to sort of say, well, were his decisions sort of right in the closing moments when, you've got to realise at some stage the wheel turns, and for all the good fortune you've had previously, sooner or later the wheel will turn back the other way, and you've got to somehow learn to manage those times as well, and we've all been there as coaches. You get decisions go your way, or, trends go your way, and then later on in the championship or in the league, they go back the other way against you, so... it's an inevitable sort of consequence of coaching, I guess, from time to time. But you couldn't fault the effort. The Welsh team were the most improved team in the championship, the most improved team from the autumn, was superbly fit. And I think the coaches did a fantastic job.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Liam Williams has faced some trolls over the weekend. He's had some criticism, and that's something as a coach yourself you wouldn't have been able to deal with back in your day because Twitter wasn't around. Is dealing with social media, especially at the Ospreys, is dealing with social media a key part of media training these days for the young players, especially?
Yeah, all the youngsters get a lot of media training. I mean, for guys like myself coming through back in the old days, we used to get bombarded with letters and, fans coming on to you and different things. But look, everyone's very passionate about rugby in Wales. I used to say when I was Welsh coach that we were a unique country. We had 20,000 registered Welsh rugby players and 3 million registered Welsh electors. Everyone sort of have a view on the team and could pick the team better than you. And, you got to love that passion. But there has to be boundaries, and when people step over the boundaries into those sort of online abuse situations, then it's just not acceptable. We should be very, very proud of our heroes on the field. They're fantastic athletes. Everyone's trying their best to get a result for Wales, and everyone looks up to those guys. I certainly am in awe of the modern player, the conditioning levels, the discipline, the diet, the nutrition, the training programs, the effort, it's the analysis. I mean, those guys are just quite unreal, really. And for someone to sit in an armchair and just troll those guys, they really need to look hard at themselves.
How have you had to, well, obviously you're taking up a different role with the Ospreys, but how have you had to develop your side as a coach? Because obviously things were completely different back in 2005 when you were Wales coach. How do you see it these days, and how much is developed?
Well, the game is, evolving all the time. As I said, the laws are tweaked and changed slightly. It's all relative because back in 2005, you're at the cutting edge then, you're on the, right on the seat, the coal seam, on the coal face. So at that time, we felt we were right on the cutting edge of how things were. But ultimately, what you find with international rugby and any sort of tournament, really, but particularly for international rugby, and Eddie Jones has found that out, it's those fine margins. If you can just get a win first up in the tournament and get that momentum going, and then suddenly, you're on a roll. All the behaviours become consistent. The confidence comes into the camp. and things go your way. And again, coming back to the referee, and the big thing that I learned when I was Welsh coach was, at first, when I first went into the job, I used to meet with the referees the day before the game, and I tell them all about the opposition and how they were illegal, or some of the trends I'd noticed, or some of the scrummaging actions of certain props. And you know what? Nobody wants to be told how to do their job, and what to look for. No one, wants somebody else coming in and saying you should be doing this and you should referee this way. And I could tell it was a real turn off for the referees, So I learned from that. I changed my behaviours around that. And going into the Six Nations, what I did with the referees was I'd meet them on a Friday as usual. And basically, I'd just tell them, listen, this is our game plan. We want green quality ball, 2-second lineouts, 2-second scrum ball. We want to get away. We've got a very exciting backline. We play some great rugby. We want the option to tap and go. I nominated Dwayne Peel as my tap and go captain. And we want to make it a really exciting game for spectators to watch, for the players to play, and for the referee. We want to make it very, very easy for you to referee, because we weren't able to outpower England. We weren't able to outpower the likes of France. Outpower them. We just wanted to be good enough up front to get the ball for the backs. And be strong enough to defend things like driving lineouts and driving scrums, near our line. So once I started talking to the referees about what we wanted to do rather than what the opposition wanted to do, I felt we got a lot of buy-in from the referees. And obviously it was very subconscious, but I felt they really wanted to help us to play that game and clear the rucks quickly, So, I definitely thought that, that was something that was of benefit to us. And you can see those same trends through the Welsh team with Stephen Jones doing so well. And, Gavin Jenkins, I think, coming in has really put a stamp on our defence in the Sean Edwards and Clive Griffiths mould. And obviously our forwards improved big time, because I think, again, people criticising Wales in the autumn, but I mean, if you haven't got the ball, if you're not doing particularly well up front, then it's very difficult to show that attacking flair. And fair play to Jonathan Humphreys and the forwards. I think they got better and better, and with the most improved pack in the tournament.
Yeah. And do you see similarities between this side and your side of 2005? Because for me, it's very reminiscent. You look back at that England game where Kieran Hardy takes the quick tap, and Dwayne Peel would do that 2 or 3 times a game, wouldn't he? And obviously, when you look back to 2005, there was that game against Scotland where I think in the second half, there was a period where there was 8 offloads in the space of 15 seconds with Michael Owen and all that. But are there similarities between the two sides, and are you happy with what you're seeing?
Yeah, 100%. Well, you got the theme through, in fairness, Stephen Jones would have learned a lot of people like Steve Hansen, Scott Johnson, the sort of skills theme, the partner play, the width from his own experiences in rugby at Llanelli with Gareth Jenkins, and obviously, his time up in Wasps as well. So, he's already a very experienced coach for a young coach and doing a great job. And, from my point of view, it was always trying to find the balance between coaching and not overcoaching. I think that's, again, one of the differences when you get to international level, when you're dealing with younger players or week in, week out at club level, you probably need to be a bit more prescriptive at times because there's a lot of change in your selection over time. And, the internationals away, you've got to give younger players a go. You've got to try and shape them and be a bit more prescriptive. But once you get to international level, if you find something you think is going to work, then you just got to give the players the freedom to do that. And obviously, if it ain't working, then you need to find solutions. So it's, there's a facilitation type role rather than an overcoaching type role at international level. If you can get that bit of spark going, and thankfully in 2005 we found that. And at the same time, I see it coming through in Wales via Stephen Jones, obviously, and Wayne Pivac, again, being a facilitator to allow that to happen. I think that's, a really good sort of bit of coaching by him, really, and management by him.
Well, we're talking about 2005, Mike. Obviously, is etched on people's memories. I think I was 9 years old, and I still remember Gavin Jenkins charging the ball down and then chucking it Rona O'Gara. Those were my big memories. It was 16 years to the day since that Ireland game. on Friday just gone. I'm sure you still have wonderful memories.
Yeah, in fairness, that was a great season, a great win. And, that particular moment you talked about with Gethin Jenkins charging the kick down, how good was he to do that? And his footballing skills as well were remarkable. And, he was some player, and he's obviously turned into a fantastic coach as well. But I want to pay tribute to Clive Griffiths there, because Clive, I remember, showed a video beforehand in the early part of the week about how, Ronan O'Gara could be unsettled if you put pressure on him. He showed us a few clips from the Lions where they tour previously, where a couple of Australian teams had got into him, and he was sort of reacting to that moment rather than sort of sticking to the game plan. And, that's what we tried to do. Clive would show down a couple of charge down kicks, and obviously that must have subconsciously been in the back of Gethin's mind, because, lo and behold, early in the game, he gets that opportunity to charge it down and finishes amazingly. So, in fairness to Clive Griffiths, I think he needs to be sort of remembered for his coaching sort of input on that one.
Was the foundations of that Grand Slam in 2005 built in the autumn prior? Because, bar a Gavin Henson kick at goal where it hit the post against New Zealand, we would have beaten the All Blacks. We only lost to South Africa by 2 points, and of course hammered Romania and Japan. Was the foundation built in the autumn?
Yeah, I think it was built for, further back. Steve Hansen, Scott Johnson, those sort of guys that started to shape our attack. I remember we were scoring lots of points. So I was admiring our attacking play from a distance. I was coaching the Dragons. I hadn't applied for the Welsh job. But then the Welsh Rugby Union came knock on my door and said, listen, we wanted to apply and we wanted to sort of come and do an interview. So I did that, not even thinking whether or not I was really going to want to leave the Dragons. I put so much work into that. And in fact, we'd finished, way above anybody's predictions that season. So I was really enjoying the Dragons. Anyway, I got the job, but, in the interview, I was asked, what would I do to change the Welsh team performances? Because even though there was some great attack in rugby, we weren't winning games. And for me, it was quite simple, particularly with my Valley roots and having, come from the Welsh Valleys. We need to get more stability around our set piece. We conceded 2 driving line-out tries against Ireland. I remember in the season before, Shane Byrne, who I'd coached in Leinster, came off the back of 2 line-out drives and scored against us. I coached Shane, so I knew what he was about. We were playing Gethin at tight end for most of the game, taking Adam Jones off for 30 minutes. So, what I commented in the interview was I thought we had a fault line in our scrummaging and our set piece play. We needed Adam Jones. We needed a tight end to play for longer at tight end. Michael Owen was in the second row. He's really not, he's such a footballer. He's not sort of going to be an 80-minute scrummage in second row for you. So, and then we had sort of flankers playing at number 8. So my view was if we could change the selection, keep the attack, and then bring in a defence coach to make us more competitive in defence. So, for example, whilst we play great rugby to attack and score tries, we let more in. So, Clive came in with me. I think he did a fantastic job. He's been very sort of understated, I think, in terms of how influential he was in the World Cup, in the Six Nations, and that particular one in the Grand Slam. And the tweaks we made in the the selection and bringing someone like Gavin Henson in at 12 as well, I think those set the tone for how we were going to approach the autumn and made a big difference to our defensive consistency and our set piece consistency. But keeping all the great things we'd seen under Scott and Steve Hansen in attack, I think it was as simple as that. Really, that blend of trying to keep what was really good and then find a couple of solutions from areas that needed to be sort of improved, and that teed us up, as you said, nicely in the autumn series for more competitive games. And yeah, I always think about that New Zealand game. Would I have swapped that kick that Gavin Henson did against England to get us off to the Grand Slam, or would you rather see that kick that hit the post go back over the bar and you beat the All Blacks. It's I've been a bit greedy. I would like to have had both, but in the end, I think it worked out the right way.
Yeah, and of course, I think people forget that going into that Six Nations in 2005, Colin Jarvis was such a big influence on the side, and he was out for the tournament. I think Martin Williams had an injury, and he come back like Lazarus in his own terms. And there were so many players that come through, like John Yap. I think people didn't realise how many injuries that you had going into that tournament, but were still able to keep that belief for their England game. And I think Alan Carter said that after that New Zealand game, the players would have been happy to play New Zealand the week after because they thought they could beat them. Was it down to belief going into that England game, knowing that for the first time in a few years, we could actually beat these?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that, if it's the players, they worked ever so hard and, excuse me, they were, they could sense that momentum was picking up, and they could sense that opportunity was there, I think. And, they learned a lot of lessons along the way from the tough times, and, just with a bit more sort of solidness up front and a little bit more aggression in our defence behind. I think there was a belief that, with the attacking style we had, we could knock a couple of teams off. I don't think anyone really dreamed of a Grand Slam going into it, but as we've all seen with the Welsh momentum, after the autumn series, we get off to a sort of winning start. You can, that self-belief grows, that confidence grows, and anything is possible. Regarding the injuries, yeah, well, look, it is what it is, and that happens to every team. I do remember the last game against Ireland, we picked Mark Taylor on the wing instead of Rhys Williams, and we kept it quiet until the very last minute because we were a little bit concerned about giving Ireland a bit of a focus, so we didn't have an out-and-out winger playing, even though Mark Taylor was a fantastic player in his own right. Put him on the wing when he mostly played centre was obviously something we didn't want to alert them to. And I remember Tails telling me after the game that about 20 minutes in, Kevin Maggs, the Irish centre, tackled him. And as he was getting up, he looked at him. He said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" So,
you did keep it well under wraps.
Yeah, we kept it well under wraps. So we only announced it literally 5 minutes before the kickoff. So, I'm not saying that sort of won us the game, but, injuries are part of it. And that particular one, we were low on sort of wings at that stage. And Mark sort of did a fantastic job for us in performing on the wing that day and helping us to win a Grand Slam. So it was that sort of thing, really. And you couldn't fault the players, really. I think everyone's prepared to play out of position or do whatever they had to do for the good of the team.
Many people pointed towards the inclusion of Gavin Henson because he was so overlooked by Steve Hansen, but there was maybe other players like Sonny Parker in his position that were playing better at the time. I think over the weekend he played rugby league in the Challenge Cup, I think. But do you think Wales ever got the best out of Gavin Henson, or is he, as some people have said, a wasted talent?
Well, we did get the best of him last season. There's no doubt about that. I can remember him coming through the under-20s. A very good friend of mine, ex-teammate Kevin Hopkins, who was the coach of the under-20s. Was telling me about him. He's a great talent. But I just think that timing is everything in rugby, and it was the right time for him. That particular season, it was the right start. England were in transition. Clive Woodward had gone. Andy Robinson had taken over. Yeah, they were still world champions, but they were in transition. They'd lost a lot of sort of big-name experienced players. I remember Matthew Tate being a young centre coming down to play in Cardiff as something like an 18, 19-year-old. And again, Clive Griffiths, to his eternal credit, making a point to the back line and particularly to Gavin that this kid would be a bit inexperienced in a cauldron that was Cardiff and should be put under pressure. And certainly Gavin Henson did that straight away, put a couple of massive hits on him. Personally, I thought it was a brave selection because when you bring in a youngster like that, I'd be tempted to do that at home rather than away, and particularly somewhere as noisy and as passionate as Cardiff would be on match day. So it was a tough debut for Matthew Tate, and Gavin really, on the back of that defensive display, I think, and his ball playing that day. I think it gave them the confidence to step up and take that long range kick.
And I think people maybe growing up watching rugby over the last few years will probably see France as, they've had a few barren years. I think, there's obviously been a lot of foreigners in the French game, and now people are sort of surprised that they're coming back. But in 2005, they were at the same heights as where they were now, weren't they? It was so difficult to win out in Paris. Was that the real catalyst for the Grand Slam push?
Yeah, it was. We hadn't even thought about it until that result, really. And certainly at half-time, we weren't thinking about it, because I think we were something 6 down. Stephen Jones nailed a penalty just for half-time. We'd been totally outplayed. I remember saying to Griff, we're in trouble here. We sat together and I said, we're in a bit of trouble here, mate. If they keep playing like this, we're struggling to live with the with the intensity that they bring into this in that first half. But the half-time came along at the right time. We got in. I think I talked about the 3 T's, tackles, our first-up tackles. We were missing first-up tackles, allowing him to get in behind us and get that green quality ball. Turnovers, we just, uncharacteristic knock-ons, little sort of turnovers that we weren't, holding on to the ball in and around the contact area, which we'd been good at in the first 2 games. And then touch. We were kicking infield to from pressure situations in and around our own 22. We were kicking infield, and the French back 3 were counter-attacking superbly and running us ragged. So, my view was, we need to find touch. We need to apply some line-out pressure. We need to force them into a sort of a slower game from those pressure situations, so we can reshape our defence and get organised again, rather than playing from loose play where they were very, very good. So I think we did that second half, did that a lot better, and I think that made for obviously an incredible fight back by us.
Well, of course, the week after you go and hammer Scotland, I think it was the highest points total at half-time anybody had ever put on Scotland, and it was a strange second half. We only scored 1 try and sort of took the foot off the gas. But I remember watching that game and just thinking, this is easy. Wales made it look easy, didn't they?
Do you know what? It was a record ball in play time, that game. So, we finished to Scotland. They came out to play. Matt Williams, who I've got a huge respect for, huge regard. Matt and I coached together in Leinster. And in fact, I remember Matt playing. He came over from Australia, for a winter, and played for like Swansea Athletic one season. So I got to know Matt as a young man, and our paths crossed later in life. And I asked him to come help me in Leinster, because I didn't have a backs coach when I first took over. It was early days of professionalism, and Matt did a fantastic job. And when I left to come back to coach the Wales A team, Matt took on and did a fantastic job at Leinster. So look, he's a very, very good coach. He encouraged them to play rugby, and that made for that fantastic spectacle. We were, as you said, confident, now on fire. We just disposed of France against the odds. So the boys couldn't wait to get out there. And do you know what? It was like, I always say, it was like a home game. There were so many red jerseys in that stadium in Murrayfield that day. It was amazing, the support we had. I think I remember one lad telling me that he couldn't get a ticket, so he went like on, some advert or online or something, saying, look, he needs a ticket. And some Scottish guy had bought an engine in Clethley or somewhere, second-hand engine to refurb his van. And the guy said, if you bring the engine up, I'll give you a ticket. And he did that. So it was amazing the efforts the boys went to get up there to watch the game, and that tickled me really. That he's driving all the way to Scotland with an engine in the back of a just to get a ticket. So the support was fantastic. So we felt like we were playing at home, and it looked that way. We looked really comfortable, really confident, and as you said, they finished to Scotland. They played rugby as well and came back, and it was a world record ball in play time. So, that just tells you, and I can't remember who the referee was, but going back to my earlier point about how we'd sort of spoken to the referees about, this openness we wanted in the game, there's no doubt that we were seeing that time after time in the tournament. The referees were really policing that tackle area, getting people to roll away. So the quality of the possession and the ruck speed was amazing.
And looking at that final game against Ireland, there's been many documentaries made about it since, and obviously there's the picture of the crowds outside the stadium watching it on a big screen, which is people on lampposts. And was there a pressure there at all? Because it certainly didn't seem like it. And I always think Wales were never going to lose that day when you look back at it. And as you said, in hindsight, it's easy to say that now. But looking back at that game, was there that pressure there? And what was it like going in on the bus, going through the crowds?
No, there was no pressure because, I remember my wife, she reminded me recently that she came to see me before the game, because we had the hotel rooms in the Vale of Glamorgan Hotel, and she was going off to a pre-match lunch, but she dropped in to put her clothes there ready for the evening, and obviously to stay over on the night of the game. So she came in. I was sitting there playing my guitar very badly as usual, strumming my guitar, whilst I spoke to our press guy we used to do a press thing about what if we win, what if we lose. And I'd sort of give half a dozen points either way on the sort of things we should say to the media after the game. About complimenting the opposition if we lost, but obviously complimenting us for our effort and energy if we won. So, I was just going through those points, strumming my guitar, very relaxed. I just no way we were going to lose that game, and absolutely, because it was just the story of the season. There was no pressure. We'd come from such a low base. Don't forget, 2 years earlier, Wales had a whitewash. We weren't sort of at the races really in terms of the pundits predicting us to do well. And it's a bit like exactly what happened to Wales this year. Their autumn series didn't give any of the pundits any sort of reason to believe that Wales were going to be in with a chance of a Grand Slam. And we were literally 4 minutes away from a Grand Slam this season again. So I'm sure the coaches enjoyed that because, no, the expectation is not there. People don't expect you to win, and then suddenly you get 1 or 2 wins and you're on the way. So, my wife came in, I'm strumming the guitar, very relaxed. After the game, I talked to Reggie Corrigans. I coached a lot of the Irish boys with Leinster, but also with the Ireland A team. I remember Reggie Corrigan saying to me, Mike, he said, we had a fantastic team talk. We had great training all week. We came out the hotel, he said, when we got on the bus, Eddie O'Sullivan had prepared us well, given us a great team talk. He said, I couldn't wait to get out there. He said, it took us about 12 minutes, to walk like 10 yards to get through the crowd to get on the bus. We got on the bus. He said it was like half a mile to the stadium. It took us about an hour. We were late because the crowds were so big. He said, we all looked out to the windows of the bus and we went, oh my God. We're not just playing Wales, we're playing the whole nation, and we're not going to win. And he said, I knew it. As soon as we got on the bus, we all knew that we weren't going to win. So it was that sort of momentum behind the whole team. It was that sort of day where everybody just knew it was going to happen. Now that sounds a bit flippant because ultimately the players, and you've got to give huge regard and respect to the players. The players went out and put massive effort in, huge physicality. I remember Rob Sidoli having a scrap with Paul O'Connell, for example. So, when I say we all knew it was going to happen, you still had to put the effort and the work in, and those guys did it,
Yeah, and you'll probably recite the day and the game second for second, but what was the night like? Do you remember much of the night?
I sure do. I remember pretty much everything of the night. It was a great, obviously, aftermatch, and a fantastic occasion. Everyone was buzzing, and I remember we went back to the Vale Hotel and got my guitar out, and we had a big sing-song in the bar. It was full. People up on tables dancing. In fact, because it was a Scottish band down. It was a Scottish band down there. We sort of nicked their guitars a bit, and me and my mate, and we were in a band together at the time called Take This, which weren't very, very good. But anyway, we decided to have a go at this and played a few songs, and everyone was up on the table. Everyone was having a great time. And in fact, many years later, 2014, I was in New Zealand coaching the Ireland under-20s in the Junior World Cup. And we got through the pool stages and we're into the knockout stages, and we had an extra day's recovery. So we went out as a management team, and we had a few beers and a bit of food, and we went to an Irish bar in Auckland called Father Ted's, and there was a lad playing the guitar, and my management team were encouraging me to go up and give a song. So one of the lads went over and spoke to the guitarist, and he said, "Look, can one of the lads play the guitar?" And he said, "Which guy?" He said, "Well, the big heavy one there," he said. And he said, "Oh, do you mean Mike?" This lad said, "Do you mean Mike?" He said, "How do you know him?" He said, "Well, he's played my guitar before in Cardiff after the Grand Slam." This guy...
That's crazy.
He'd gone touring the world, playing his guitar in the band. Scottish lad, met a New Zealand girl, married, lived in Auckland with kids. I got up, played the guitar, and he got my email and he sent me a video of that night after the Grand Slam win against Ireland, of everybody singing and dancing in the bar while I'm playing the guitar. So so that helps my memory really. It was just a absolute unique occasion. It was brilliant.
What a small world, eh? But yeah, you mentioned Ireland there. You spent a lot of time out there. Obviously, your son played for Ireland, Reece, as well, and Leinster. I want to talk about their game on the weekend. Obviously, Andy Farrell's been under a lot of pressure over the last few months. How big a win was that for Ireland and him especially?
Yeah, fantastic win for the coach. And, it was always difficult following in the footsteps of a very, very successful coach, as Wayne Privak has found out with stepping into Warren Gatner's shoes. And in fairness to Wayne, he's done a remarkable job. And, immediately now the union should make sure that he goes ahead to the World Cup. I don't know exactly what his contractual situation is, but, I think we need the continuity there. Andy Farrell coming in on the back of Joe Smith's incredibly successful time. And of course the Irish provinces doing well, sort of there or thereabouts in Europe and the Pro 14 year in, year out. That's obviously made for a situation where any coach coming in there's a level of expectation. So, again, he's had a sort of a tough transition, trying to shape his coaching philosophy, and to get that win in such a comprehensive manner, I'm sure will encourage him, his employers, and the Irish nation that they got the right guy doing the right things and the right coaching blend. I think Paul O'Connell, his addition has made a big impact as well, in the same way that obviously Gethin Jenkins coming into the Welsh coaching panel has made a big impact as well. So I think that having guys who've been there, done it like that, legends like that, I think mightily sort of important to that coaching group. And Ireland should be there or thereabouts. Look at the players they got, look at the depth they got, and it's important they kick on now towards the World Cup. Challenges they've got, of course, is that some of the best leaders and best players are getting a little bit older. So, coming up with the succession planning and getting the depth sort of chart right over the next year or two is really important for them.
And from England's point of view, a lot of fingers have now been switched towards Eddie Jones and the security of his job. Is this just a blip what England are going through now? And is it worrying that, players like Tom Curry, Sam Underhill, who would have been shoo-ins before the Six Nations for the Lions this year, have now got question marks over their heads?
As Frank Sinatra used to say, and I apply it to coaching, riding high in April, shot down in May, That's like, I was going to give you a rendition then, bro.
Get the guitar out.
You don't want to lose the people on your podcast. So listen, it's that sort of job, it's that sort of career. There's highs, there's lows. There's no coach in the world, if you do it for any period of time, that doesn't get the boot up the backside as well as the pats on the back. it's a tough gig. In fact, now I've stepped out of it after 34 years, I actually realise how hard it is. It's it's so enjoyable when you're in there and you're loving that interaction with the boys and the players and the challenge of it. But when you step out of it, you think, would I really want to get back into that again? Because, as much as you think you can control all the controllables, you can't do it every time. You can't do it on every occasion, and there's going to be the odd season where things get a little bit flatter than normal. So I think I used to talk about the 3 Ps. After you lose, so preparation, you got to look at that. Your performance, you got to look at that. Are there solutions you can analyse and present to sort out some of the performance difficulties and personnel? So have you got the right selection? So the 3 Ps I always stood by. Did we get our preparation right? What was missing? What did we do that we shouldn't have done, or did we over prepare, under prepare? Performance areas that we didn't cover off and came back to bite us, and then personnel. If we got the blend right, and is it linked to our vision? Is it linked to our game plan? Are they performing to the level? And you've got to keep on doing that all the time. And then ultimately, your employers are going to be doing something similar with you. And I guess the only thing I would say, Eddie's got a lot of credit in the bank. He's a tried and tested elite level coach who knows how to win games and knows how to prepare teams. So I don't think it's the time to panic for England. They've had a lot of success under Eddie, and these championships are again fine margins, as we've seen and as Wales found out, and we've all found out from time to time. It's one little twist in momentum can change the whole picture, really.
And finally, Mike, we're sticking with the lines. We just mentioned players who may or may not be picked for the tour this summer if it goes ahead. I think back to 2005. I think many people would have thought the whole of that Welsh squad would have been in the Lions side. That's how well they played. But Sir Clive obviously went with his tried and trusted, and we all know how that panned out. But how many of Wayne Pivac's men will be on the plane or will be playing in the UK against South Africa this year? And will Alan Wynne-Jones be the captain?
Well, personally, I think Alan Wynne-Jones should be captain. I think that particularly with the English form being very, very indifferent, and some of their leaders perhaps not playing, for example, Saracens playing in the championship and all that sort of stuff, that's probably affected some of the form of some of the, better rated English players this season. I think Alan Wynne is just, he's absolutely the right fit for that job, and against South Africa as well. You need massive competitive streak, you need huge physicality, you need experience to go out to South Africa or to play South Africa in the UK or whatever it's going to be, Ireland. So I think he's just absolutely the right guy. He's got respect of everyone there around him, from all the other nations. And look at the way he's led Wales. And do you know what is even more remarkable about his effort this season is Alan Wynne had a very bad injury, knee injury. He rarely gets injured, and he knee injury before the tournament. Didn't play for about 6 weeks, and then runs out on the field and performs, like the best player in the tournament. Week in, week out, and his ability to still want to keep on improving, his mindset to want to improve, his mindset to drive a team. There's no doubt he should be captain. As for the rest of the guys, look, I'm sure lots and lots of guys are right in the frame. Warren Gatland obviously knows Welsh players. He knows their heart. He knows their guile. He knows their competitiveness. So, look, I don't want to go into specifics about names, but I'm sure Wales will be very well represented.
Well, finally, Mike, before you go, is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round?
If it's about mathematics, mate, you wouldn't bother. Can I phone a friend?
Firstly, Mike, who's the best player you've coached?
So many, really. But I mean, obviously, top 3: Brian O'Driscoll, Percy Montgomery. Well, anyway, let's bring it at the top 2. Let's go with that.
Best player you've come up against as a coach?
Oh, I loved coaching against Martin Johnson back in the day. When I was with Leinster, we beat Leicester 3 times out of 4 in the European Cup, and the biggest challenge was Martin's ability to try and influence the referee as well as his fantastic play, you know. So, okay, he wasn't running 70 yards to score tries against you, but he influence the game, you know. Huge respect for that guy.
Yeah. Best match you've been involved in as a coach?
Probably when Swansea beat Australia with the world champions at the time in '92. Different game, different period, but going back to my earlier comment, at that time it was like cutting edge, front of the cold face. So yeah, that one.
Funniest player you've been involved with as a coach?
Keith Coquelin, the old Swansea prop. As a player, I loved his humour, and then as a coach as well. A quick story about Keith. So, of course, it was the days before professionalism and, gym programs. And I'd very often ring him on a Wednesday. If I left him out of the team, I'd ring boys on a Wednesday and say, listen, selection's gone against you. Here's the reasons why. And I'd ring Keith, and very often his wife would answer, Julie, and say, Morriston 564. I say, Julie, is Keith there? And she said, I'll get him now. And in the background, I could hear the music to EastEnders or Coronation Street coming up. And all of a sudden, Julie would say, Keith, it's Mike on the phone. And then I'd go, yeah, okay, 1 second, 96. He'd shout 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. And he'd come on the phone and say, I was going into this conversation about performance and leaving him out of the team, and I'd be laughing my head off. And he'd have me every time. 100 press-ups watching EastEnders,
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And finally, Mike, if you weren't a rugby player, what would have been your dream job?
I'd love to have been a jockey, but that wouldn't happen. Perhaps wild water swimming. Now I've got into, early morning dips in Langla Bay. But no, look, I tell you what, I would have loved to have been as a rock star.
Yeah.
My 3 chords have served me well over 30, 40 years. So playing 3 chords, perhaps a bit of status quo type, it could have been a very different life. I've got the looks, I've got the voice. Unfortunately, there was no Britain's Got Talent when I was coming through the door.
Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, mate. I've really enjoyed that. I wish you all the best with the Ospreys and in life in general. We don't know what's around the corner, do we, mate? But hopefully we can get you back on in the future.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nathan. I appreciate that. And hope it goes well with the rest of your podcast. Thanks for the opportunity.